So, Freemasons know history is a lie, do they? Should we dive into this wormhole and see just how deep the stupidity goes?
Shut up and sit down, you big bald f***.
Please subscribe.
I used to work for a Freemason and literally out of a Masonic lodge. And this Freemason, he would always make references in his work to Pliny the Elder and similar ancient historical types. And I think it's because they knew the truth, at least some of the truths, that history is mostly a Freemasonic fabrication and a lie.
Look, I hate to break it to you, Hans, but the Freemasons aren't as clandestine as conspiracy theorists like you seem to think they are. Now, Freemasonry does have some secret aspects, like rituals and handshakes.
Piccadilly Circus, Piccadilly Circus.
But it isn't exactly a hidden organisation, is it? They've got buildings, they hold public events, and are pretty open about their existence.
This is just one of the biggest lies that modern society has to pass off, is that people in the past sucked the worst and they were stupid.
So the good old days were actually peak human enlightenment. And anyone suggesting otherwise is running a smear campaign. Because as we all know, modern medicine, sanitation, technology, and basic human rights advancements are just trivial details compared to the glorious unembellished past. It's almost as if acknowledging progress is a direct affront to some people's nostalgic delusions. So let's find out if inferior or stupid is just another way of saying lacked penicillin and proper plumbing.
And that today is the best that you could ever have it. That's a lie that they have to put off. And they're always talking down on people in times past, making up giant lies like, oh yeah, they threw poop out in the streets. And I mean, maybe that's what the people did right after the last historical reset.
Suggesting that acknowledging historical realities like poor sanitation and saying that that's just a takedown or that they're giant lies is quite a stretch. Even for you, Hans. So you're telling us that centuries of historical records, archaeological findings, and basic common sense about pre-modern infrastructure are all just part of some grand conspiracy to make people feel bad about the past?
Anyways, that's just the example that always comes to mind. They're always doing a smear campaign on the past. But when you realize that, nope, history is a lie, when you learn what Freemasonry means, Freemasonry literally means that there's all sorts of masonry left around for free that people go and they claim as theirs.
Are you taking the piss?
Now, to be fair to Hans, he's clearly done at least some reading about Freemasonry. He's wrong, and I will explain why, but at least he's tried. Now, there are actually a few theories on this, starting with what I think Hans got confused about. It possibly comes from free stone, but not in the way Hans described free stone. And this is arguably the most credible theory. Free stone was a type of high quality limestone or fine grained sandstone that could be cut and carved in any direction without splitting, and skilled artisans who worked with this free stone were distinguished from rough masons who dealt with the less refined materials. So Freemasons were the elite, high-skilled stone carvers of their time. Then there's freedom of movement that suggests that these master stonemasons were free to travel from town to town, making them Freemasons. And then there's one about something French. Look it up, it's really interesting. So essentially the name is a historical nod to their origins in highly skilled and relatively independent builders of the past, even though modern Freemasonry is more about building character, not cathedrals.
I mean, I guess population hoax gets into this too, and I am going to talk about that later in this video, that today people think that the earth has never been this populated before. That's a huge lie. I don't even believe, I think that they greatly exaggerate the number of people, but if you just use your eyes and you fly in an airplane and you drive around, you'll notice, oh man, it's mostly empty space. Most people don't even own land today. And when you go out and you drive, it's mostly empty everywhere.
What about all the demographic studies and the census data, satellite images showing bustling cities? Are they all just CG? And apparently the Earth was once so jam-packed with people that they all just poof, vanished. It's a miracle we found space to build anything. Are we just going to ignore the concept of exponential growth and the verifiable population booms of the last few centuries? Because clearly the vast emptiness you are seeing, Hans, is far more reliable than global data.
And the cities really aren't full. There's so much boarded up today that, and like old stuff, old giant buildings that are just empty, mostly empty today.
Well, I'll have to remember that the next time I'm in Times Square, because I could have sworn there were tens of thousands of people around me. But clearly, according to Hans, it was just the Freemasons making me think there were lots of people around me, and Times Square's really empty.
But yeah, I think that it's just something I've been thinking about. My old, the guy that I worked for who was Freemasonic, now I know. Oh yeah, he was super into Pliny the Elder because he knew history was a Freemasonic BS clown freak show.
And I suppose making videos about things like flat earth, penguins not being real animals, sharks being paid actors are all perfectly normal. Seriously, he's made videos about all those things. Just type Hans Wormhat into YouTube.
And so he understood the wisdom in ancient texts. And I think this is really an interesting old text. I think that it follows similar patterns to a lot of old texts. I'm into music and I like to learn. I don't want to take a modern music theory course. I want to learn what people in the Renaissance were talking about and what people in the Baroque era were talking about. And when you go and you read those texts, you notice that they had certain styles. And one of the styles that people wrote in were snippets. It's almost like the memes of today. Like they understood that people are really good at taking in small bits of information.
Awesome. So the wisdom of the ancients were just early memes. While it is true that ancient texts varied in style, equating complex philosophical dialogues or historical accounts with memes is rather stupid, wouldn't you say? It's almost as if somebody is trying to make their conspiratorial interpretation sound more relatable to a young modern audience.
Population hoax is that today people think that it's the most populous it's ever been. That's not true. We're living in the crumbs. So much of the old world has been demolished.
This historical reset theory that you keep mentioning is nothing but the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for any historical inconsistency. So whenever something doesn't fit your narrative, you just invent a global cataclysm that conveniently wipes the slate clean, leaving vague remnants for modern-day conspiracy nutjobs like you to rediscover.
Starting again from now!
Alright, that's the extent of most of my rambling. Now I'm just going to go through
and ramble some more.
This was an interesting anecdote about Egyptian frogs.
Well, I mean, why not? You know, Freemasons, Egyptian frogs, they're basically the same thing.
Egyptian kind of frogs hath a peculiar wisdom, and far excelleth all other. For if a frog meeteth a serpent bred in Nilus, she biteth off a piece of reed, and holds it as fast as she can crosswise, and will not let it go. The serpent is not able to swallow the reed because his mouth is not so wide as the reed. Thus the frog by wisdom overcomes and masters the strength of the serpents. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, I thought it was pretty irrelevant. Haven't you got anything else stupid to say?
Okay, so one thing, maybe I'll just make another video on this. I'm just going to shove this in at the very end.
Oi, there'll be no shoving of anything on this channel, even if it is just the very end. Bit insensitive as well. I had my first prostate exam yesterday and I'm still recovering from it.
Moon River.
The Toledo War. Part of how you can know that American history is really fishy. Standing on the shoulders of giants, the founding fathers. Founding fathers found this stuff. They didn't build it, they found it.
I like that. So Hans thinks that they're called the founding fathers because they found America.
And I don't even believe that, like, George Washington was chopping down the cherry tree is probably a metaphor for something.
The story of young George Washington and the cherry tree is indeed widely recognised as a parable or fable, probably invented by biographer Mason Locke Weems to teach a moral lesson about honesty. But the leap from this historical anecdote is likely metaphorical to, therefore, all of history, including verifiable events and the existence of the Founding Fathers, is just a grand, convoluted metaphor for something else entirely. Well, that's where the wheels fall off the fact bus, if that's where you're going with this. And when I said say something stupid, you definitely haven't disappointed, Hans.
And I think that those figures already existed in Tartarian / whatever the previous reset, or maybe even the one before that, who knows, but Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, blah blah blah, those people probably existed, but we just make up stuff, we made up new names about them, and we made up new lore about them, and pretended that those were the people with starting this new reset.
So according to this logic, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, two of the most thoroughly documented individuals in American history, with reams of personal letters, public documents, architectural design, scientific papers, and independent accounts, weren't actually the people we all know. They were just two placeholders, old Tartarian celebs who got a rebrand courtesy of a reset event that somehow left behind absolutely no trace of it. Because basement windows are evidence of a basement, not of a global mud flood reset or whatever the hell you're going with this.
And you can tell that the populations are just not, they don't match. They're not, they don't make any sense.
Why? Because they disprove your stupid reset theory.
Why did the Mormons go out to Utah?
I don't know. Why did the Mormons go out to Utah?
It's because they knew that there was gonna be stuff out there waiting for them to occupy and because it was post-reset.
I actually thought he was going to tell us a joke.
And so I guess that's where if you were really, really advanced, you could try to really suss out exactly where the reset begins. It's like, you know what it reminds me of? Like those fake backgrounds where Wile E. Coyote, where the Roadrunner paints like a background. In history, at some point in time, there's like a painted background like that, where the road actually doesn't go into the distance. Somebody has just painted a background.
Now, usually after the person I'm making a response video to says something stupid like that, I jump onto the old interwebs and look it up just to make sure. It's always wrong, but I do my due diligence. But what Hans just said about painted background, I don't even know where to start. So on that note, I think we'll call this video done. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you again on Friday. Love you. Bye.
Out of everything that's on the internet, this is the best thing.
So I was watching TV with Mrs. Blinder last night, and the announcer came on and said there was a documentary about the clitoris on the red button. I couldn't find it.
I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna